Hi, folks. I know I didn't upload on time, and that's alright. I've been trying to find a good topic to do a documentary on. I decided to go on Nazi Germany and the Vatican support they received. Now, the way I was going to do this was to prove whether or not they were in support. That's easy enough to do. All you really have to do is do a Google search, and everything and anything Vatican and Nazi Germany pops up. So that's a very easy thing to do. I'm not going to get into the financials. I'm not going to go into this. But Pope Pius XII was very famous to be at these rallies. There's always a Catholic church in the background or somebody sponsoring something somewhere that Hitler did involving the Vatican. Now, I don't know where the roots start, where the roots stop, and whether or not it was just a continued relationship with Germany and the Vatican, kind of whitewashed everything. But I know they gave him a crap load of finances. I mean, the Vatican even then pretty much owned everything. And so they may not have given them bullets or tanks, but I'm certain they opened trade routes for them, among many other things, folks. And so I'm here to tell you there's another eye over here, folks. I'm here to tell you there is a long laundry list of reasons why Pope Pius XII and the Vatican were in confirmed support of Hitler. But like always, folks, you decide. Alright, so I have a lot of different things to tell you. I have a lot of different things to show you. I was going to go with 2 or 3 different routes. One where I showed you various details through the war and showed you the support. I was going to go through photos. I was going to pull videos. I was going to do everything. But I wanted to really just get this out there and show you guys that, everything was good, and that if you see a bunch of photos with these guys together, you know it's legit. And you don't need to see a bunch of financial statements and everything else between the Vatican and the Nazi Germany and Third Reich thereof. Also, for anonymity reasons, among others, I like to keep this a little bit more on the docile side of history. So, what I'd like to do is I'd like to first go through some of the photos with you. I have about 8 or 9 photos. Ooh, excuse me. And they're World War II style photos, folks. Black and white. And all you gotta do is search the internet and you find any number of things the Pope or a Vatican official was there in support of Hitler. So, any number of these things you decide to do, you would see beyond a reasonable that the Vatican was in support of Adolf Hitler. This first one here is very interesting. It says, Hitler used Nuremberg Church of Our Lady as war propaganda background. Photo Heinrich Hoffmann, September 1934. This is the one I used right here for the beginning picture. Catholic Cardinal at Hitler War Rally. Photo John Conwell, Berlin, 1935. This one here, the third one, Archbishop Orsingo's annual birthday party for Hitler. So he basically threw Hitler a birthday party, folks. If you're not willing to love the guy or do this or do that, then you shouldn't be throwing him a birthday party. Well, that's kind of the way it works, and that was 1935. So we move on. Here's that photo again. some kind of coronation ceremony or celebratory ceremony. There he is, folks. I believe that's the Archbishop. And I don't know much about what was going on, but I believe this was 1934, 1935. Here we go. This is from George Mason University. And as you can see, he's meeting with Hitler in the background. And I don't even know who this is. I think that's Goering. If I had to guess, I'd say Goering. Here's Hitler basically bowing out on one knee, almost, not quite, kissing the Pope. Not a whole lot there, but you guys get the idea. Now, here's that same figure at one of the war rallies. I cannot read this. I cannot read that. Reichsler, Essler, Nerntis. This was 1933 at the Bischof Bornwasser. Supposedly, okay, so these are the guys there. Bischof Bornwasser, Sebastian, I guess there's a third guy over here, and Gertler Buckel. I can't really read this for anything, folks, especially this tiny print. I'm not even going to try to translate that for you because I know I'll get it wrong and somebody will complain. But you can definitely read that and translate it through Google, and I'm certain you'll be able to find that. Alright, so like Italy, Germany signed a Concordia with the Vatican in Rome in 1933, so you might want to look that up. There was a Concordat with the Vatican in 1933 between Nazi Germany and Rome, and then one between Italy and Rome. So you might want to look that up. Signing the Concordat is Cardinal Pacelli, later to become Pope Pius XII. By 1933, he was the Vatican Secretary of State. Nice, that's something you guys need to know. Second from the left, Francis von Papen, or Papen. I guess it says sinister Nazi. Maybe it says supposed to be senior. And devout Roman Catholic, who is Hitler's ace diplomat. Don't know what that means. And Vatican's agent in helping to bring Hitler to power. I disagree with that, folks. I've read a few good books. I know who Hitler's inner circle was, at least partly. I've never once heard of this man in my life. Starting for the far right, can be seen little known Vatican prelate, relate, something like that. Montini Lanter to become Pope Pius XI. So, there you go right there, folks. Not a whole lot of good, not a whole lot of bad. You guys get the idea. This is coming from the Godfathers by Chuck Publicans. Supposedly something about a page 20. And we're basically back here. First thing I want to do, folks, is take you through the internet and just show you how many results. 6,400,000 results happened. Supposedly the first one being Hitler's Pope, Pope Pius XII, or Pio XII if you're doing the Italian version. Vatican Hope secret files exonerate Hitler's Pope. This seemed to be changing a little bit, but let's type in Vatican and Hitler. Here we go. This is one I want to talk to you about. The Reichskonkordat. And this is the concordat with between Rome, being the Vatican, and Nazi Germany. So I'm going to put that up. That is one I've been wanting to talk to you about. The images I've already gone through. I'm not going to go through that. Catholic Church and Nazi Germany, I'm really not going to go into. I have a few other ones also, folks. So let me show you this, because this will go into the Reichskonkordat. English Reichskonkordat is a treaty between the Holy See, which is the Vatican, in Rome, not to be confused with the Holy See of Alexandria or the Holy See of the other place that I found in the other video. And Germany negotiated with Nazi Germany 20th of July 1933 by Secretary of State Eugeo Basili, Pope Pius XII, which was also ended up being the Department of State person for the Vatican at the time. So I'm not going to go into all this because this is basically just going to be sourced, and you guys can look this up. Besides, this is Wikipedia. I don't want to look at Wikipedia very much. All I want you to do is kind of see it, understand that it happened. This Reichskonkordat was a real thing. Remember, I read it in that picture. This confirms it here. Here's another from Wikipedia. I don't like using this, but it does jump on the subject matter right away, which I like. Catholic Church in Nazi Germany. Pope Pius XI and Pope Pius XII. So from 1922 to 1939 and 1939 to 1958, led by Roman Catholic Church through the rise and the fall of Nazi Germany. Around a third of the Germans were Catholic in the 1930s. The church in Germany had spoken against Nazism, but the Catholic aligned with the Central Party capitulated in 1933. You guys get the idea. While Article 24 of the NSDAP party platform called Conditional Tolerance of Christian Domination in 1933, the Reichskonkordat Treaty with the Vatican purported to guarantee religious freedoms to Catholics and basically allowed for the whole situation between Nazi Germany and the Catholic Church. This one here has to do with the JewishVirtualLibrary.org, Vatican and the Holocaust, Pope Pius XII and the Holocaust. Now, we're not going to see any major photos even still in circulation today, folks, of the Pope in the concentration camps, praising Hitler or any of this other stuff. We're going to have to do a bit of our own work to put all this together, but I'm certain they were well aware of everything. And let's be honest, folks, with the way that Germany ended up in after World War I, I'm sure the Vatican was very helpful in starting Hitler and his regime off right, especially after what the Jews had done to the Germans after World War I. I'm not going to get into that because I don't have all the facts in front of me to start rattling off figures and everything. But they basically, after World War I, due to all the things that happened, basically the Jewish people stripped Germany of all of its major territories. I mean, they basically raped Europe like crazy. So what happened was, after that, everybody got really pissed off. And that's why you had what happened in World War II. World War II is nothing really but a continuation from World War I. And if you read history, even badly, you would see the same or almost the same parties are involved and everything else. So this is basically it right here. Now they start talking about this from the Facility in 1917, Papal Nuncio in Bavaria in 1929, the Pope in 1939 having very little about Hitler's ideology beyond 1935 speech, describing Nazis as miserable plagiarists who dress up old errors with new tinsel. Told 250,000 pilgrims at Lourdes in April 28 of, I believe, the 1935 speech. It does not make any difference whether you flock to the banners of social revolution, whether they're guided by a false conception of a new world and life, or whether or not there are possessions, superstition, race, or blood cult. And you guys kind of get the idea here. I mean, cries for help, papal reasons and responses. The Pope does eventually protest. Politics beyond policy. Contemporary developments, that's not really one of what we want here. So the last one, folks, I brought you from the Jewish perspective. It's coming from the Constantine Report. This is coming right straight out of the EU. And it says the EU had lack of authority to intervene. This is coming straight out of the history books. And it basically goes on to say how the Vatican Financial Authority reached a bilateral agreement with German Federal Criminal Police Office and everything else, folks. And then it goes into the history and everything down here. And then it basically talks about everything down here. And basically how... this one here is more of an updated version, but it does talk about how everything was between 1941 and 1945, where the others were only talking about the 1930s and the the early and the late 1930s. This talks a little bit more about today's issues and how they led up from the disappearance of the treasury of the Nazi puppet state of Croatia, and how basically the Vatican was involved in that levy. And basically some Northern California District Court that basically wanted to appeal ruling that the Vatican Bank and Supreme Court was basically involved in this treasury heist back from 1941 to 1945. So that's what basically this is about, and this is involving Croatia and Nazi Germany. We've all heard about the famous treasure hikes and everything, folks, heists, and all the bullion and all the things that went every which way. This actually has a great... Let's see here if I can get it back. 1 second. I'll show you this real quick because this actually shows you good information into the background. I'm not going to show you much, but this is unscribed. And if you read this, it'll give you more into what this is talking about here. But even today, folks, we're finding all this gold. We're finding all these connections and everything. Find all these connections and everything. And it just sells more that the Vatican and Hitler were involved, that it was more than just a mutual respect and more of a country bidding situation. Now, everybody says, "I'm Mark, you're anti-Catholic." I'm not anti-Catholic. Never have been, never will be. This is another source out of the jewishlibrary.org. Understanding the Vatican during Nazi Germany period is a little bit different. It has a nice little red thing here, nice little red or brown banner here that the other one did not have. This is a different document. It talks about different things. And it does talk about Cardinal Secretary of State Pius XI becoming Pius the 12th in the 1930s. And it does profess the differences between why basically the Christians were in question of whether or not the Third Reich and the Holocaust were terrible. Why were the churches doing this? And basically they said, for Christendom, it wasn't just the Roman Catholics, it was the Protestants, the Eastern Orthodoxes, and many others. But for us, when we think of the Holy Church, folks, we do see the Holy See as being probably the biggest here. And basically it said that church diplomats, being Vatican diplomats, continued to speak in favor of justice and charity, but were largely unconcerned about the persecution of Jews in the Nazis or collaboration governments. So, basically, folks, if they weren't getting attacked, they didn't care. And I think that's pretty much the way it is today with everything going on. And that basically came around from the 1930s to the 1940s with French ambassador to the Holy See, Leon Barrade, who sent a memo to the Vici of the Vatican Views. And you can read all this, folks. But basically, this goes on to talk about the British Americans and various people that basically tried to sway the Catholic Church to actually do something, and it basically seemed as if they were kind of coercing it on one side and not favoring it on another, but basically making their money and letting them do what they wanted. And this was 1942. 1943 here mentions the SS and the Vatican itself. Signal for Berlin and German ambassador to the Holy See, Ernst von Weizsäcker, portrayed as a pro-German pope, alluding to his reluctance to protest the assault on the Jews. You guys get this and everything else. Alright, everybody, so was there an actual Vatican connection? Yes, absolutely. Was it more than just the Vatican staying in touch with the state and the affairs of the state? Yes, it was. There are hundreds of documents from the Vatican archives, from various other places. You saw two from a Jewish library of sorts. You saw photos with these guys together. Not only are they together eating meals, at state dinners and such, but these guys, whether it's Pius XI, Pius XII, when he was a Department of State guy, or when he was Pope and other persons thereof, there are very well-connected incidences and situations where these guys are showing up to main party meetings, main party rallies, everything basically, to say, we support what you're doing. Now, did they support everything? No, of course not. Probably not. But did they help with, looting gold and various other things? Well, the only thing I can really say, folks, and I could do 1,000 documentaries on this. I could go any number of ways. I could show you all the financial documents that are in archives, and I could go into the politics, into the religions. I could go into that somebody mentioned that there was a sexual relationship between the Pope and Hitler. I highly doubt that's anywhere near true. But we can go into any number of things here, and we come out and say, yes, Hitler and the Vatican basically were very well connected in the 1920s, 1930s, and 1940s. I just gave you several documents, and it basically pointed to almost 100 different topics that you could expand this on. Do I want to get into the nitty-gritty? Not so much. First off, the financial records is going to cost if you start looking into them to find the good ones. You can do any number of searches you want Nazi and Vatican Gold is one that's quite popular, various others. And you can see how these guys are basically helping them, with the money trails and everything else. And do I know whether or not the Protestants and the Eastern Orthodox guys were helping out as well? Probably were to a lesser extent, but everybody pushes the Catholic Church and the Holy See of the Vatican and Roman authority thereof as the church. So we will always view them as the front dogs that probably helped the Red Cross and various other organizations keep these guys in power for as long as that they were in power. And whether or not you believe this is up to you, but the Vatican was in high authority in those days. They still are today, but kind of in the background more. I do know in the 1930s there was a somewhat of a ban on Catholicism in the 1930s. I forget what it was that I was researching. But basically how we're looking at Islam right now, that's kind of a weird way that America was looking at the Holy See wasn't around then. What we know today as the Vatican, back then. So they were kind of on an S list. I don't know all the details behind that. Maybe it was just because they were at so many rallies with these guys. I don't know. Maybe they were, trying to strike chords with, all the bad deals. I don't know what the situation was. But we have confirmed there was a serious Vatican and Nazi Germany connection in the 1930s and 1940s. As always, folks, you decide. Thank you.